Okay, so we got some new interesting topics that I never thought I'd have to talk about million years to come in the future. Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat. The many ways the crossover almost happened. I wonder what's gonna happen if back then when the 90s when the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat characters would have actually collided together, it would have created a huge impact in people's lives. That or they would have sparked everything I could ever imagine. Street Fighter will take a particularly any property out there except Mortal Kombat. By having these two giants cross paths in the past 3 decades. Jesus. The picture of M. Bison and Kotaro. Oh man, imagine them having a video game in the past, especially if it's made by Capcom. I can only imagine what the Mortal Kombat characters would have looked like. Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior, the game that really kickstarted the fighting game genre, has turned 30 years old this year. To celebrate, Ryu and Chun-Li are appearing in Fortnite as par for uh, the curse for Ryu, who has been in so many crossovers to fight everyone from everywhere. And speaking of Fortnite, I thought that was kind of stupid for them to add the Street Fighter characters. I felt like it was really unnecessary to say the least. Ryu has crossed over with the cast of Tekken, the guys from King of Fighters, the Marvel superheroes, just about everyone under the Nintendo banner, G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, and even Family Guy for some odd reason. Ryu and Street Fighter have crossed over with nearly everyone, which is true, and they have crossed over well because of the Legacy Wars video game. And for some odd reason, I kind of felt like it's kind of dumb to add Street Fighter characters and Power Rangers. I just find them funny as Power Rangers. It's weird. Yet for some reason, the #1 dream fighting game matchup has never happened. Yes, we're talking about Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat. These two giants of the fighting game industry have never exchanged blows despite being household names from the very beginning of the fighting game boom of the early 90s. That doesn't mean there haven't been some close calls or that they haven't brushed shoulders in the past. If you look at Ryu and Liu Kang's background, both fighters have unique fighting styles in terms of martial arts, with the dragon punch, with the fire. And if you look at the Super Street Fighter 2 newest addition when it comes to Ryu's Dragon Shoryuken and his Fireball Hadouken, those were some upgraded moves in the newest version of that game. Liu Kang's Fireball has always stayed the same, but it's more updated. And as far as his uppercut and his bicycle kick goes, I don't think they even match up to Ryu's Hurricane kicks. Just saying. Because I feel as though they do twice as damage to the face. And I don't really see Liu Kang doing that though. The beginning of the rivalry, the first iteration of Street Fighter 2 came out in February 1992. This was the sequel that made the good on the premise of the 1987 original, which had great ideas that couldn't really execute. The improvement that is still incredibly playable to this day. It was a lucky break for Capcom, who would go on to milk the game's success with several new editions of the title of the same name, which is Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2's Champion Edition, all the way to 2017's Ultra Street Fighter 2, The Final Challengers. Now, I I wasn't really a fan of the voice acting of the final challengers. I just think they kind of butchered up a bit too much, to say the least. That's just how I felt, so you could disagree with me. If you were a fighting game, okay, I can't even pronounce the words, I'm not going to say it. You know the industry. The success of Street Fighter II sparked the boom for the fighting game genre in Japan, as it came release Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting right on the heels of Capcom's hit. While Alpha and Denshi gave us War Warriors in 1982, meanwhile in America, Midway Games were planning its own Street Fighter II competitor, which was originally meant to be a tie-in game for the movie Universal Soldier starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. When that project fell through, Midway turned to the much gorier Mortal Kombat, a fighting game that digitized actors instead of sprites, an innovative approach to animation at the time. Released on October 1992, Mortal Kombat was a major hit, and Midway quickly put out a sequel, Mortal Kombat 2, 6 months later in April 1983. The third game will be out 2 years later. Mortal Kombat was speeding through its early days from cabinet after cabinet, while Capcom was forced on re-releasing newer versions of Street Fighter 2 after making bosses playable, adding new characters, and tossing in other bells. The course of various upgrades, the studio concluded the game's original run with 1984 Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. This is a long article, so I'm not really going to read that much, so I'm going to read to you this last bit right here. That meant that at the time when the internet was in its infancy, these two popular franchises were mainstays of print gaming magazines, announcements, previews, reviews, secrets, tips, and so on. If your early 90s magazine didn't have at least a page dedicated to Street Fighter 2 and or Mortal Kombat, then get your eyes checked because you weren't looking hard enough. Like I said, this is a long article, so I'll have it in the description box so y'all can check it out. So, what did you all think? Do you think these two collab back then? If so, you know what to do. Let me know in the comments down below.